The moon illuminated the calm surface of one of the bays of the Mediterranean Sea. A woman's hand gently slid across the back of a man, embracing him. The naked body pressed against the firm, hairy chest. The second hand dived behind his back, clasping him in an embrace. The man looked into the green eyes of his companion and was struck by their beauty in the bright moonlight. He closed his eyes, kissed the woman, and pulled her closer. He wanted to fully experience the softness of her body. "I feel so good with you," the woman said. "And I with you," the man replied, kissing her again. "I have never met such beautiful women as you." She closed her eyes and passionately kissed him. The night sea hid their naked bodies up to their shoulders. The beach was empty, specially chosen so no one could disturb them. The gentle sound of the surf dissolved their words, preventing the sound from reaching the shore. The man ran his hand down the woman's back, grasped her head through her thick, long hair, and moved it aside, exposing her neck. His kisses moved from her lips to her neck. The woman threw her head back and let out a soft moan, arousing him even more. "I wish this moment would never end," she whispered softly. The man did not respond and continued kissing her. She took his head, lifted it to her eye level, and asked seriously, "You will always be mine now, right?" "Of course," he replied with a smile. "We will always be together now. I want you right now. I want you in the sea. I've never done it in the sea before." "Neither have I. I want that too." The green-eyed beauty wrapped her legs around the man. Their lips met in a passionate kiss. As the water supported her weight on him, she slightly emerged from the water, rising on him and exposing her firm breasts. The man quickly understood the hint and began to gently kiss her breasts. "That tickles," she giggled, arching back and flailing her arms as if trying to swim away. Her legs, locked behind his back, pulled the man along with her. He no longer felt the bottom and began to move his arms and legs. The woman pulled herself back to him, kissed him again. "Wait," the man tried to stop her. "I can't stand. It's very difficult to do anything. I like it this way." She did not stop kissing, not letting their lips part. Her hands roamed up and down his muscular back, and her legs squeezed him like a vice. "Come on, wait!" The man roughly broke free from the woman's kisses. "I'll drown. I can't feel the bottom." The woman huffed in disappointment, unlocked her legs, and swam a few meters away. The man turned towards the shore, wanting to return to where they had stood firmly on the bottom, but the shore was very far away. The gentle slope of the beach in this part was deceptively steep. Panic began to rise within him. He frantically looked back at the woman. On the smooth surface of the moonlit sea, there was only a bright streak from the moon. There was no sign of anyone else. "Elena, where are you?" There was no answer, no sign of the woman. "Eleonora," he shouted desperately. The only response was the faint sound of the city in the distance and the twinkling lights. The man turned towards the shore and began to swim back. Thoughts raced through his mind about how he had swum so far without noticing, given the steep slope of the beach. Suddenly, something touched his thigh. A shiver of fear ran through his body. "Elena, that's not funny," he said sternly. From behind, he heard a soft female laugh. He turned around, and something quickly dove under the water on the calm sea surface. "You're crazy," he muttered, swimming towards the shore. A sharp blow to his ankle immobilized his leg. Something cold wrapped around his limb, preventing him from swimming. The man shook his leg, but every movement was difficult. He reached down to free his foot. Holding his head above water, he felt something slick and cold holding his foot like a lasso tethering wild prey. His hands explored further. A hard, slick object stretched into the depths, gradually widening. The man's mind suddenly realized he was feeling a hand, a cold, soft hand in a thick, slimy substance. Horror began to overwhelm his consciousness. The man lunged towards the shore, trying to keep his head above water. His arms swiftly paddled the water, propelling him away from the vast watery expanse. His free leg thrashed, helping him swim. The cold burden still clung to his leg like an anchor holding him back. After a minute, his strength left him and his arms stopped paddling. His heart pounded and sounds faded, leaving only. The young man looked towards the city, but the shore had not gotten any closer. A sudden jolt from below pulled him underwater. He opened his eyes and tried to look around, but the darkness of the night sea made it impossible to see anything. Fingers on his foot spread open and began to slide up his body. The man flailed his arms and legs, trying to surface. He managed to take a deep breath before another jolt from below pulled him even deeper. He opened his eyes and saw Eleonora in front of him. She was completely naked. Her perfect body was flawless, with green eyes and thick, long hair flowing underwater. She was calm and smiling, looking into his eyes. A strange light began to emanate from around her. Her skin started to turn pale and decay, covered in a disgusting slime. Her eyes dulled, lifeless. Her once beautiful hair became sparse, like an old woman's, and more like algae. Her body was covered in sores, oozing slime. The light behind her grew brighter and brighter. The man screamed at the top of his lungs, exhaling all the air from his lungs. "You are mine forever," a raspy, gurgling voice echoed in his head. The light around the woman intensified. Her skin turned pale and began to rot, covered in disgusting slime. Her eyes dulled, lifeless. Her once beautiful hair became sparse, like an old woman's, and more like algae. Her body was covered in sores, oozing slime. The light behind her grew brighter and brighter. The man screamed at the top of his lungs, exhaling all the air from his lungs. "You are mine forever," the voice repeated. The woman reached out to him and kissed him with her half-decayed lips. The man tried to fight back and swim to the surface, but it was all in vain. She wrapped her legs around him, held him in a tight embrace, and pulled him to the dark bottom. The plane door opened. Dmitri, along with everyone else, walked down the long corridor into the building. The flight had been extremely challenging. Initially delayed for 8 hours and then cramped seating on the plane. He had specifically chosen a daytime flight to avoid feeling exhausted, but the universe seemed to conspire against him again. The whole year had been relentless. Passport control, baggage claim, customs, and finally the airport transfer bus. Dmitri settled in comfortably and immediately fell asleep. The rising sun shining directly in his eyes couldn't overcome his fatigue. A sharp turn jolted his head against the window, waking him up. Dmitri rubbed his sore eyes and saw he was on the final approach. The road, winding along the slope of a high hill, revealed glimpses of his beloved city. Soon he would be at the hotel, and the long-awaited vacation would begin, leaving all his problems behind. Marmaris. Dmitri fell in love with this city from the moment he first arrived. A colleague had recommended it as a lively place where he could travel alone and never feel bored. Dmitri took the advice and was captivated on his first night. The city was vibrant, unlike Moscow, yet uniquely charming. During the day, the popular streets were almost deserted, but at night, the central street and promenade came alive with hundreds of strollers. Girls, half naked and smiling, unlike in Moscow. Dmitri felt drawn to them, unafraid to approach, even with the language barrier, knowing he would only be there for 10 days. On his first night, he was captivated by the atmosphere of joy and vacation. "Excuse me," a voice with a strong accent called from behind. "You can't be here right now." A hotel staff member approached him. "Why not?" Dmitri asked. "The city administration has closed the beaches for 3 nights due to expected storms," the staff explained, struggling to find the right words in Russian. Dmitri was surprised, but complied, returning to the hotel area. As he left the pier, a police officer sternly eyed him and stretched a "do not enter" tape across the entrance. "What happened?" Dmitri asked the hotel staff accompanying him. "Everything is fine. The beaches are closed for safety reasons due to the expected storm," the staff reassured him, recalling his Russian vocabulary. The clock showed it was time to head into the city. Dmitri retrieved money from his room and boarded a shuttle to the city center. His first stop was a cocktail bar styled like a castle. After a 15-minute walk and 100 steep steps, he reached the bar, slightly out of breath. Tonight, he was the first customer. He chose a table with a view of the promenade and the lighthouse in the distance. Ordering his favorite cocktail, he noticed the unusual emptiness of the place. "It's quite empty tonight," Dmitri commented to the waiter in broken English. The waiter glanced at the clock and replied that it was still early, and people usually started arriving after 10. As Dmitri sipped his cocktail, more customers began to fill the bar. By the time he finished his second drink, the place was bustling. The promenade was also lively with a mix of locals and tourists. At 11, the lighthouse began to flash red. Dmitri had never seen it active before. In the red flashes, he could see the path leading to the lighthouse, also cordoned off. Suddenly, he noticed a figure near the lighthouse, a girl. She appeared out of nowhere, standing still and gazing at the sea. After a few minutes, she began to pace slowly along the edge of the path, her eyes fixed on the water. An ominous thought crossed Dmitri's mind. What if she was planning to end her life? The secluded spot, the high waves, and the dark night seemed perfect for such an act. Dmitri paid his bill and hurried down the steps, almost running past the crowded streets. He ducked under the tape and cautiously approached the lighthouse, using his phone's flashlight to guide him. The girl seemed unaware of his presence, continuing her slow pacing. "Nice spot," Dmitri said, unsure of how to start a conversation. The girl turned, paused, and silently stared at him. "I said, nice spot, quiet and peaceful. I've been here a few times. It's a great place to be alone in a noisy city." "You probably don't understand me," he continued, realizing he might sound foolish. He was in a foreign country, in a restricted area known mostly to locals. It was unlikely another tourist would wander here. The girl remained silent, watching him. "How do I talk to you?" he whispered, switching to English. "This is a restricted area. I came here to stop you from doing something foolish." The girl laughed softly. "I understand you perfectly," she replied in Russian, "but your English needs work." A wave of relief washed over Dmitri. He no longer had to struggle with finding the right words. "So, you're Russian? I didn't know how to talk to you," he said, smiling. "Half Russian. My father is Greek and my mother is Russian. That's why I have an unusual name." "Were you trying to pick me up?" she asked playfully. "Not exactly," he hesitated, looking at the water, calmer now than during the day. He decided to tell the truth. "I saw you from the bar, pacing alone. I thought this would be the perfect spot to end your life. I rushed here to save you." She smiled enigmatically and replied, "So, you're a hero? That's sweet. But I'm not planning to die, at least not tonight. I like this place. It's quiet and peaceful. I've been coming here every year on this day for the past 23 years. It's become a tradition for me. Let's walk along the promenade instead. This area is restricted and I don't want to spend my vacation in a Turkish jail," Dmitri suggested. Eleonora laughed and ran towards the lively street. Dmitri quickly followed, using his phone to light the way. They strolled along the promenade, talking. Eleonora revealed that she had moved to Marmaris 23 years ago and had been living there ever since. She was supposed to get married, but the wedding was canceled at the last moment, leaving her single. She appeared to be in her early 30s, with striking green eyes, curly black hair, and a toned figure from regular exercise. Her low-cut dress hinted at her cleavage. Throughout the evening, Eleonora never asked Dmitri to buy her anything, which he found unusual but refreshing. Around 3 in the morning, they headed back to the road to catch a taxi. "Would you like me to escort you home?" "It's quite late," Dmitri offered. "No need. I live just a couple of houses away and everyone knows me. I'll be fine. Besides, I prefer to avoid gossip. I have a reputation to uphold," she said coquettishly. "Then come with me to my hotel. I'll make sure you get in safely," he suggested, opening the taxi door and extending his hand. She gently closed the door, leaving him inside. "Not tonight, but our encounter isn't over yet," she said with a smile. The next morning, Dmitri woke up to the sun streaming through his window, having missed breakfast. He freshened up, grabbed a towel, and headed to the bar for a cocktail before finding a spot on the beach. The nearest available lounge chair was far from the hotel, out of Wi-Fi range. He sipped his cocktail and decided to take a nap. "Did you hear what happened in the city?" A nearby conversation caught his attention. "No, what happened?" another voice asked. "They found a girl's body in the sea near the central promenade this morning," the first voice said. Dimitri's eyes snapped open. "Eleonora!" She had assured him she had no plans to die. "What did the girl look like?" he asked the women nearby. "I don't know, I just overheard the staff talking. Thank goodness I understand Turkish," one of them replied. Dimitri rushed back to the hotel, grabbed his phone, and searched for local news. Nothing. No reports of any drowning incidents. He translated his search into Turkish and tried again. The first result was a video from an eyewitness showing police and rescuers pulling a young, dark-haired girl from the water. The crowd obscured his view, but he could tell it wasn't Eleonora. Her dress was different. He watched intently, waiting for a clear view of the girl's face. Finally, he saw her raise and mouth wide open in a silent scream, features contorted in horror. There were no visible signs of violence, but on her ankle, he noticed a reddish mark, like a burn from a hand grasping her. The shape resembled a handprint. It wasn't Eleonora, but the sight was unsettling. Dmitri spent the rest of the day thinking about Eleonora. He hadn't been able to get her out of his mind since their encounter. He decided to return to the city that evening, hoping to find her again. That evening, he headed straight to the lighthouse. The area was now cordoned off with an additional yellow tape, restricting access more tightly. This was where they had found the drowned girl's body. He walked along the promenade, scanning the crowds for Eleonora, but she was nowhere to be found. Past midnight, he sat on a bench near the tourist monument, feeling dejected. "I told you our encounter wasn't over," a soft voice said from behind. Dmitri turned and saw Eleonora. A surge of joy filled him, and he embraced her tightly. This time, she didn't resist and hugged him back. "I've been thinking about you all day. I saw the news about the drowning and thought it was you. I'm so glad you're safe." "I would never forgive myself if something happened to you," he said, holding her close. "Don't worry, I'm fine. But there's something I want to show you," she said, taking his hand and leading him away. They walked back to the old town and turned into a narrow alley. The path was lined with lush greenery and red flowers, reminiscent of Italy. After a short climb, they stopped in front of a small house. "Look," Eleanor pointed upward. At the end of the alley stood the high stone walls of Marmar's castle. A guard sat on a chair, scrolling through his phone. "That's Marmar's castle. Have you been there?" she asked. "No, I haven't. It's always crowded with tourists, and I never felt like exploring it in the heat," he replied. "It's my favorite place in the city. Let's go tomorrow," she suggested. "How about we go now?" he asked, feeling a sense of adventure. Eleanor smiled mischievously, picked up a stone, and threw it into the bushes near the guard. The guard stood up, shone his flashlight into the bushes, and then sat back down. She threw another stone, and the guard repeated his inspection. On the third throw, the guard got up and walked into the bushes to investigate. "Quick, follow me," she whispered, crouching low and darting past the guard post. Dmitri followed closely, his heart pounding with exhilaration. They climbed the stairs to the castle wall and stepped onto one of the towers. The view was breathtaking, even more spectacular than from his favorite bar. "What if we get caught?" he asked, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Don't worry, I've done this 100 times. I only come here at night to avoid the crowds and the heat, just like you," she reassured him. They admired the city lights, the distant Ferris wheel, and the calm sea. Dmitri felt a sense of peace and happiness, standing there with Eleonora. He turned to her. wanting to kiss her, but the sound of footsteps echoed from below. "Who's there?" the guard shouted in Turkish, shining his flashlight in their direction. "It's the guard! Let's go," Eleanor whispered, pulling Dimitri's hand and leading him to another tower. They descended the stairs and exited the castle, walking casually back towards the promenade. "That was quite an adventure you got me into," Dimitri said, still catching his breath. "It happens sometimes. I've had to run from the guards many times, but I know every nook and cranny of this castle. Once, I even hid and jumped out to scare a guard. He screamed like a little girl and ran away. I never saw him on duty again," she laughed. "Let me walk you back to your hotel," she offered, surprising him. "I'd love that," he replied, feeling a mix of excitement and curiosity. They walked along the promenade, past the bars and ice cream stands, towards his hotel. Eleonora told him about her life, her move to Marmaris, and her estrangement from her parents after the canceled wedding. Dimitri listened attentively, not wanting to interrupt her story. He shared his own experiences, his divorce, and his search for meaningful connections. He felt a deep sense of gratitude and happiness, walking hand in hand with Eleonora, feeling more alive than he had in years. As they reached the hotel entrance, Dimitri turned to her and asked, "Would you like to come in?" "Not tonight," she replied with a playful smile. "Let me at least pay for your taxi back. It's a long way," he offered. "No need. I'll be fine. I want to walk," she insisted, seeing the disappointment in his eyes. She leaned in and whispered, "And tomorrow night might be special for you." Dimitri's spirits lifted at her words. He hugged her tightly, feeling her soft body against his. "All right, I'll let you go. But how will I find you tomorrow?" he asked. "I'll find you, just like I did tonight. Just stay at the hotel," she said, blowing him a kiss and walking away. Dimitri watched her until she disappeared into the night. As he walked back to his room, he felt a sense of joy and anticipation, like a child on Christmas morning. He couldn't wait to see Eleonora again. The next morning, Dimitri stood by the road, waiting for the shuttle to the city center. He had woken up early, filled with excitement for the evening ahead. As he looked through his suitcase, he realized he had nothing suitable to wear for a date with Eleonora. He decided to go shopping and find something nice. After arriving in the city, he headed straight to a clothing store. The salespeople were surprised to see a customer so early, but Dimitri was on a mission. He tried on various outfits, finally settling on a simple yet elegant shirt and shorts. He wanted to look his best for Eleonora. He walked along the promenade, looking for a nice restaurant to take Eleonora to that evening. Suddenly, an ambulance sped past, sirens blaring. A crowd of people followed, and Dimitri's curiosity piqued. He joined the crowd and saw police and paramedics gathered near the lighthouse. The area was cordoned off, and a body lay on a stretcher covered in a white sheet. Dimitri pushed his way to the front, trying to get a better look. As the paramedics wheeled the stretcher past the crowd, a leg slipped out from under the sheet. On the ankle, he saw the same reddish handprint mark. A child in the crowd started jumping and shouting, "Lanet, Lanet!" A woman nearby scolded the child and covered his mouth. The paramedics quickly tucked the leg back under the sheet and loaded the stretcher into the ambulance. The police finished their inspection and left, removing the cordon and dispersing the crowd. Dimitri walked over to the lighthouse, seeing a large puddle where the body had been found. A trail of water led back to the promenade, and he realized that the stretcher had been leaking. The sight was unsettling, and he decided to head back to the hotel. He sat in the lobby, searching for information about the meaning of lanet. He discovered it was a Turkish word for curse. He spent hours searching for any information about a curse related to Marmaris or Turkey, but found nothing. The image of the reddish handprint on the two drowned girls haunted him, and he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. At 9 in the evening, Dimitri sat by the stone railing at the hotel entrance, sipping a sweet cocktail. The sea was calm, reflecting the rising moon. Suddenly, a pair of soft hands covered his eyes. "Guess who?" a familiar voice said playfully. He smiled, turned around, and took her hands, kissing them gently. "How did you get past the security?" he asked. "I charmed the guard," she replied with a playful smile. "Let's go for a walk. It's such a beautiful night." "Would you like me to get us some drinks to take along?" he offered. "No, thank you. I don't want anything," she declined. They walked along the path leading through the city towards the outskirts. Eleonora took his hand and suggested they walk further away from the center. She was in a cheerful and happy mood, and Dmitri felt his worries melting away in her presence. Tonight, Eleonora wore a long white dress adorned with flower patterns. Her bare shoulders and deep V neckline revealed her ample cleavage, and her long flowing hair cascaded down her back. She looked stunning, and Dmitri couldn't take his eyes off her. After about half an hour, they reached the outskirts of the city, where the hotels and bars ended, and the noise of the city faded away. Only the sound of the distant road remained. "This is the city limit," Eleonora said, stopping and turning towards the sea. "A few more kilometers down the road is Ichmeller. Have you been there?" "No, not yet. Would you like to go there?" he asked. "No, I don't want to leave the city. I haven't left Marmaris in a very long time," she said with a hint of sadness. She turned to face the sea and suggested, "Let's sit on the beach." "But it's cordoned off," he pointed out. "No one will see us," she assured him, leading him under the tape and onto the wild beach. Eleonora lay down on her back, placing her hands behind her head and gazing up at the stars. Dmitri lay beside her, following her gaze. "Do you know any constellations?" she asked, breaking the silence. "Eleonora," he said, ignoring her question. "I've seen 2 strange drowning incidents in the past 2 days. Both girls had reddish handprints on their ankles. Today, a child was shouting Lanet near the body. Do you know anything about this?" "Yes," she replied with a sigh, clearly not wanting to discuss the topic. "It's a local legend about a curse." "Tell me about it," he insisted. "There's not much to tell. According to the rumors, a long time ago, a girl lived here. One day, she returned home early to surprise her lover, but found him in bed with 2 other women. She fled, and he chased after her, catching up to her at the lighthouse. She was hysterical, screaming and hitting him. He tried to calm her down, but she wouldn't listen. In a fit of rage or desperation, he struck her, and she fell, hitting her head on the concrete. He panicked and dragged her by the ankle to the edge of the water, pushing her in to hide the evidence. Ever since then, her spirit returns every year for 3 days, taking 2 women and a man with her into the sea," she explained. "Who does she take? Does she target unfaithful lovers?" he asked, feeling a chill run down his spine. "Some say she only takes the unfaithful, while others believe she takes whoever she can find, faithful or not. Every year, the city tries to prevent the curse by closing the beaches, but it never works." "The curse always finds a way," she said, her voice filled with sadness. "Do you believe in this curse?" he asked, searching her eyes for the truth. "No, I think it's just a sick maniac taking advantage of the legend to cover his tracks," she replied, though her expression betrayed a hint of doubt. "Eleonora, I can't stop thinking about you. I haven't felt this way about anyone in a very long time. I think I'm falling in love with you," he confessed, taking her hand and gazing into her eyes. "Let's go for a swim," she suggested suddenly, her mood shifting from melancholy to playful. "It's a beautiful night, and the water is calm." "But we can't see anything. It's too dark," he protested. "You don't need to see. You only need to feel. Turn around and don't peek. I'm not wearing a swimsuit," she said playfully, standing up and untying the bow at the back of her dress. Dmitri turned towards the road, hearing the soft rustle of her dress falling to the sand. He imagined her standing there, naked and beautiful, her body illuminated by the moonlight. "Okay, you can turn around now," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He turned and saw her standing at the water's edge, her back to him, naked and stunning. She stepped into the water, submerging herself up to her waist, and then turned to face him, covering her breast with her long hair. "Are you coming?" she called out to him, her voice sultry and inviting. Dmitri quickly undressed, leaving his clothes in a pile on the sand. He walked into the water, feeling the coolness against his skin. Eleanor smiled and wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing her body against his. "I'm so happy with you," she whispered, kissing him softly on the lips. He looked into her eyes, cupping her face in his hands, and kissed her deeply, feeling a surge of passion and desire. She wrapped her legs around his waist, and he held her close, their bodies pressed tightly together. "Will you always be mine?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Eleonora, I want that more than anything. I think I'm falling in love with you. I haven't felt this way in a very long time," he confessed, his voice filled with emotion. She smiled and leaned back, arching her body and spreading her arms wide. Her legs, still wrapped around him, pulled him deeper into the water. He took a few steps back, feeling the bottom drop away beneath him. She unwrapped her legs and floated beside him, her body brushing against his. "I can't stop thinking about the curse," he said, his voice filled with worry. "What if it's real? What if we're in danger? You're my hero, remember? You'll protect me," she said, pressing her lips to his and kissing him deeply. "Wait, Eleonora, I need to ask you something. Let's go back to the shore and talk," he said, pulling away from her kiss. "Just kiss me," she insisted, her voice sultry and seductive. She wrapped her legs around him again, pressing her body tightly against his. He felt himself being pulled deeper into the water, and he struggled to keep his head above the surface. Suddenly, he felt something brush against his leg. He looked down, seeing a dark shape moving through the water. "Eleonora, what was that?" he asked, his voice filled with panic. She laughed softly, her breath hot against his ear. "It's just a fish. Don't worry," she reassured him, but he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. He looked back at the shore, realizing they had drifted far from the safety of the beach. He tried to swim back, but Eleonora's grip on him tightened, holding him in place. "Eleonora, let go! I want to go back to the shore," he said, struggling to free himself from her grasp. "Just relax, my love. Trust me," she whispered, her voice soothing and calming. He felt something sharp break across his back, and he cried out in pain. He tried to turn to see what had attacked him, but Eleonora's grip held him firmly in place. Another searing pain sliced through his leg, and he realized they were not alone in the water. "Eleonora, something's attacking me. We need to get out of the water," he shouted, panic rising in his voice. "Shh, my love, just relax. It will all be over soon," she whispered, her voice cold and distant. He felt another sharp pain in his side, and he cried out, struggling to free himself from her grasp. He kicked and thrashed, trying to swim back to the shore, but her grip was like a vice, holding him tightly in place. He felt something sharp rake across his chest, and he screamed in agony, his vision swimming with darkness. "Eleonora, please, you're hurting me," he begged, his voice filled with pain and betrayal. "You promised you would always be mine," she said, her voice cold and unyielding. "I did, but not like this. Please let me go," he pleaded, his strength fading. "You promised," she repeated, her voice filled with a chilling finality. He felt another searing pain in his side, and he knew he was running out of time. With a final surge of strength, he tore himself free from her grasp and swam towards the shore, his body racked with pain. He could feel the blood pouring from his wounds, leaving a trail in the water behind him. He struggled to stay afloat, his vision fading in and out of darkness. As he neared the shore, he felt something grab his ankle, pulling him back into the depths. He kicked and thrashed, trying to free himself, but the grip was unyielding. He felt himself being pulled deeper into the water, the surface slipping away from his grasp. With a final desperate cry, he screamed out the Lord's Prayer, the words tumbling from his lips in a frantic plea for salvation. Suddenly, the grip on his ankle released, and he swam towards the surface, his lungs burning for air. He broke the surface, gasping for breath, and swam towards the shore, his body racked with pain, He could see the beach ahead, tantalizingly close, and he struggled to stay afloat, his strength fading with each passing moment. As he neared the shore, he felt something grab his leg, pulling him back into the depths. He turned and saw Eleonora, her eyes wild and crazed, her hair streaming behind her like a dark halo. She lunged at him, her fingers curled into claws, and he realized she intended to drag him back into the water, to drown him in its depths. With a final desperate surge of strength, he kicked out at her, his foot connecting with her chest. She stumbled back, momentarily stunned, and he took the opportunity to swim towards the shore, his body screaming in agony. He reached the shallow water and struggled to his feet, his legs shaking and weak. He stumbled towards the beach, collapsing onto the sand, his body racked with pain. He turned to look back at the water, seeing Eleonora standing at the water's edge. "I take it back," he gasped, his voice filled with pain and betrayal. "I don't want to be yours. I don't want to be anyone's. I just want to live." Eleanor's eyes flashed with a cold, calculating rage, and she lunged at him, her fingers curled into claws. He braced himself for the impact, but suddenly she stopped, her body frozen in place. She looked down at her chest, seeing a dark stain spreading across her dress, and she realized she had been stabbed. Dmitri looked up, seeing a figure standing behind Eleonora, a knife clutched in their hand. The figure stepped forward, and he recognized the guard from the castle, his eyes filled with a grim determination. "I told you to stay away from her," the guard said, his voice cold and unyielding. "She is mine, and I will not let you take her from me." With a final chilling scream, Eleonora collapsed onto the sand, her body lifeless and still. The guard turned to Dmitri, his eyes filled with a cold, calculating rage, and he realized he was next. Local news. This morning, the body of a man was found near the lighthouse. His identity has been confirmed as a Russian tourist who was vacationing in the area. After an autopsy, his body will be transferred to the embassy for further arrangements. Like the previous two victims, his face was frozen in a grimace of terror, and a reddish handprint mark was found on his ankle. The curse has claimed its victims, and the city is safe for another year. The administration will attempt new measures to prevent the curse next year, but no further information about the curse or how to stop it has been uncovered. And now for other news.